Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Our Town Creative Placemaking Technical Assistance Learning Lab, our second learning lab of the season, of the series. It's really great to be with you here today. We're looking forward to seeing all of you in the sessions. My name's Lynn McCormick. I'm the director of the Creative Placemaking Program at Local Initiative Support Corporation. And we'll be here with you for the next 3 days, along with our colleagues from the National Endowment for the Arts and our planning team that includes Margie Waller, who's been doing a really great job working with our resource team on putting this event together. Gally, could you go to the next slide, please? So thanks again for everyone for being here. We are really excited about this lab. Our resource team has worked really hard in their presentations, trying to make things as relevant as possible to your projects. I'm going to just start with a little bit of overview of just some notes and guidelines for you all to take as you take part over the next 3 days. If you could go into your, for this particular workshop with Catherine, we probably won't be using the video a lot for all of you. But when you do come into the meetings, if you could change your name on your screen with your first name, your pronouns, and the location that you're coming in from, that would be great. So there's a little, if you don't know how to do that, there's 3 little dots up in the right-hand side of your little video screen, and you can go in there and it'll say change your name. So if you could do that, that would be great. The sessions will be recorded, but not our conversations. So the Q&A section of this particular one actually will be, but for the rest of the sessions, we won't be recording the conversations. So just the presentations. Couple of ground rules. We really understand that everyone's coming from very different contexts and very different communities. There are a lot of commonalities, but there are also some really, there are a lot of differences as well. So please don't make any assumptions and really listen deeply to what people are saying before you react or provide your input or advice. Really understand the context folks are coming from. We encourage you throughout the sessions to connect with each other. If you have questions, please use the chat. These sessions over the next 3 days will have a lot of interactivity. This particular session will be more traditional in terms of a presentation and then questions at the end. But the rest of the sessions will be putting you into breakout rooms, and we really encourage you to reach out to each other as much as possible during the sessions. Feel free during the 3 days to connect directly with any resource team members that pique your interest. If you want to get in touch with them and ask them for advice, they're all teed up to do that. In the past, we've been having you kind of work through me or Jordan on the LISC team to connect with them. But at this point, we really want you to feel comfortable just reaching out directly to the resource team members if you need any of their help. If you're on the meeting right now and you actually haven't registered, we're doing this is a little different than the last time as well. We've got an Eventbrite set up that everyone sort of registered for. And so if you haven't actually signed in through that Eventbrite, if you could just go ahead at the end of the day or tomorrow morning and just put your information into that Eventbrite. We're really just trying to capture who's here and make sure that we're tracking things really well for the program. And then we also have your contact information in a little bit more robust way. So if you could do that, that'd be great. We're really excited to start the day. I'm now going to turn it over to Jen Hughes from the National Endowment for the Arts, who's here to welcome you on behalf of the NEA and the Endowment.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you so much to LISC for your amazing partnership and to the entire team that really has pulled together these learning labs. And thanks to all of you for joining us. If you were with us back in November, welcome back. If you're kind of joining into this program for the first time, welcome to it. I hope that you really find this programming to be rich and really enable you to move forward in your project, feeling supported with some new ideas, some new peers, some new ways of working, because we all are really navigating these challenging times. And yet I am seeking so much inspiration in the work that you all are doing on the ground to really lift up arts and culture as a driver for strengthening your community. So just a little refresher, our program goals over the next 3 days, we're really hoping to offer inspiration. We have a fabulous lineup of resource team members. I hope you drop into as many sessions as you are interested in participating in, because I think that they will do a couple things. First, inspire you. I imagine you'll also really seek some inspiration from your the various participants in this program, your peers across the nation. And we really hope that the program really grounds you in your work and activates the ways that you can go forward with some actionable ideas. And lastly, just connecting you. Certainly over the next 3 days, we hope that you will feel connected and part of this program, as well as meeting some of your peers from across the nation, and know that that connection can continue beyond. I think, as Lynn really aptly mentions, the resource team members stand ready to support you in some of your sticking points or challenges, or sort of ways in which that they can help mentor you throughout the life of your project. And this is really part of a broader plan for us to establish a community practice with the Learning Lab as sort of our mechanism right now, as we can gather virtually. And lastly, we have a wonderful partner as part of this project, Leah Reisman, who's really been teasing out some of those shared challenges and successes, because this is a learning opportunity not only just for all of you, but for all of us. We've certainly heard from the resource team that they are learning alongside you and have found these engagements to be incredibly rich and generative for the broader field of creative placemaking. So we're really excited to get started. And I think we can sort of move into the next slide. I think a lot has sort of changed in our environment since we last met in November. So I just wanted to share a few updates from the National Endowment for the Arts and what's happening on our side of the house. You may or may not know, but we have 4 new appointees that joined us from the Biden-Harris administration, starting on day 1 back in January. And we've been really enthused and excited to see the ways that they are envisioning how the priorities of the administration plays out in the NEA's work. Won't come as a surprise. There is a real emphasis and focus on recovery and how the arts and cultural community can really help to build this nation back better. So I think in the coming months and years ahead, you'll really see that as a part of the work that we are doing. Really enthused to know that racial equity is really central to this administration, and really taking a hard look at how we work as an agency and really best work to serve that goal of racial equity. We're also really excited that in partnership with LISC, we're sort of coming up with ideas for our next learning lab that can really explicitly dive more deeply into this topic. But certainly throughout the sessions that you will be participating, we encourage you to ask those hard questions. We have a great resource team who are also really well steeped in that topic. And it's been really exciting to just see the ways in which the new administration is perceiving the role of arts and culture to really address those priorities in a real way, thinking about ways that artists and culture bearers play a role in both the public health of our nation and also our short and long-term recovery. So you may have heard the news earlier this week that the American Rescue Plan has been signed into law. The National Endowment for the Arts will be distributing was allocated $135 million to support the arts and cultural community in the country. Primarily, there will be grant guidelines that should be drawn up in the coming months that will really offer an opportunity to support operational costs and continuing the great work of arts and cultural organizations in this country that have been impacted so severely by the pandemic. So really stay tuned to those things that are happening within the agency, and we'll make sure we proactively communicate out with you. And I think just, you know, in this time of virtual gathering, you know, I hate to promote another webinar, but we're really excited that Dr. Fauci is going to be a guest speaker in a webinar next week about how arts organizations can reopen their venues in 2021. So this will be hosted by the National Endowment for the Arts. So if that is really something that you're engaged in locally and thinking about how your venue reopens, or you have colleagues or community members who might be interested, please feel free to share far and wide. That's going to be on Tuesday, March 23rd from 3 to 4 p.m. And And lastly, just a reflection that we have as a team. You'll soon be hearing from my colleague, Catherine Berry-Simons, who I'm sure many of you have had wonderful touch points throughout the life of your grant. But we are just kind of wrapping up the review for the Our Town FY21 grantees that will be announced in May. We're excited to share sort of how this work continues to evolve and respond in this moment. So hopefully the next time we gather, we can share more about that as well. So with that, I'm just so excited to be with you all today and throughout the next couple days, and looking forward to learning along with you and engaging a little bit more deeply with the work that you do. With that, I'll pass it over to Catherine to take us from here.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you. Thank you so much for joining. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about how we manage our awards and navigate kind of the lifespan of an NEA award. So pardon if this is a little bit dry. My goal is just to give everyone either kind of a refresher or at least a sense of the lay of the land as far as all of this stuff. But many of you are well underway with your project work. So I think probably a lot of this is stuff that you're familiar with, but I think it's helpful nonetheless just to take the edge off if there's any anxiety or stress about managing one of these awards for the first time. I want to give you just a sense of how it works and some of the things to keep in mind throughout. And I am so thrilled to be joined by my colleague who works down the hall in the grants office. Meg Kowalik is the lead grants management specialist at the Arts Endowment. She's here with me to kind of nuance and correct and contribute to what I'm gonna share. And she's also gonna help me answer your questions at the end of my quick presentation. And I'll just say with the question and answer, please ask whatever questions or request clarification on anything that comes to mind. That's what the session's all about. And people always say this, but I can 1000% guarantee that if it's a question that you have, others have the same question or could use that clarification. So don't be shy. And we'll look forward to answering those. Let's see how it, there we go. So here's some of the content I was thinking that we would cover today. One, I want to just give you a sense of the life cycle of an Our Town award. Some of the things to keep in mind around just that award management over the course of your project. And how you'll be in touch with us over the course of your project. Some helpful notes about how to credit the Arts Endowment. What to keep in mind as you consider maybe applying again to the Arts Endowment. Everything I'm going to talk about is covered in the Manager Award Handbook, which I'm always sending out that link. But just to remind you that basically everything I'm going to say, we can reference back and find in this Manager Award Handbook. It's a great document. I'm going to touch on a general operating report waiver, which is new and newsy and hot off the press. And I'm not sure if you've heard about it already, but you can expect us to be reaching out to you about this. We'll touch on it briefly at the end, and then we'll get into your questions. So here's the life cycle of an Our Town award, right? We've been through the award stage. 99% of you have received clearance for the National Historic Preservation Act from our Historic Preservation Officer, Brian Lusher. And now many of you are well into your period of performance. It's during this time that you can be making payment requests, that you are documentation of in-kind match like volunteer time, of course, recording your activities. You are, if the project is changing at all, you're making changes to the Arts Endowment, you're staying in touch with us about that kind of in real time. Also, when you're coming up on spending 2/3 of your NEA award amount, you also need to just have in mind that you're going to submit a progress report with that payment request. I'll talk about that later. We're also going to be requesting an annual update from fiscal year 20 awardees. I'll talk about that a little bit more later too. And then on the horizon, right, 90 days after your period of performance ends, you will be completing your final reporting. So that's a couple of parts. There's the federal financial report, the descriptive report, a Geo report, which just tells us, it's pretty simple and just tells us kind of where your activities took place. And submitting a final product. None of you are required to do that. And stay on top of that final reporting deadline, because as we see folks become late in submitting final reports, then you will expect a nasty gram from us, which is stressful for everyone. So I don't expect anyone to be entering that territory, but there are some repercussions. It means that you can't be considered for an award until that gets cleared up. It's not the end of the world. You can request an extension to get your final reporting done, but you are kind of on hold as an eligible applicant until that requirement is satisfied. And so if I were to leave you with one takeaway from this, it's to please stay in touch with us, which we're able to do in kind of a new way through this technical assistance program. But I just want to reinforce that. So feel free to email us or message me via the Reach system. We can set up a call. You know, I'm happy to talk with you about just the progress of your work, major milestones met. We're always happy to receive documentation of your work. If you get a great press story, or you have just a series of really compelling, beautiful images, we're always collecting those. Of course, if you're seeing that the project is changing or you're getting really hung up in making progress in carrying out the project, reach out to me and we will work it out. But just want to share that these are the kinds of things that I, as program staff, expect you to kind of be in touch with me about. And like I mentioned, we're also going to be reaching out to, this is new in this year, fiscal year 20 awardees. I'm going to ask you just sort of 12 months into your period of performance, how are things going? I'm going to message you via Reach. And this is really meant as a way for us just to kind of have a sense for how folks are moving along in their project. I'm really just going to be checking for whether things are on track. And if they're not feeling like they're on track, it's good for us to know that and we can troubleshoot. And that's just sort of a new piece this year. So I think I'll be planning to do that in July. Most of you are had projects start July 1, 2020. So coming up in July would be, I think, the time that I'd be reaching out with that. So the grants office reviews and approves some of the more formal adjustments you would make to your award. We would call those amendments. So you should message us through Reach. It's the change request tab. As you're seeing project personnel change, if we should have different contact information for you on record for being in touch about the project, please share that new information with us. If your project scope is changing, that's a really important adjustment we would want to know about and be able to make and review with you. Be in touch with me about that, be in touch with the grants office about that. A project scope change requires approval from both offices. So again, just don't hesitate to be in touch if you feel like the activities, the budget, these kinds of heavier issues are changing. Project budget may be changing. And this is really detailed in your award handbook, but the kinds of changes we're really interested in is if you're introducing new line items, right? You all have a budget on file in Reach for your project, which has costs and in-kind match that have been reviewed and approved by us. So your project really should be continuing to adhere to that approved budget. If you are finding that, you know, perhaps you had a bunch of travel costs approved in that budget, and you're not going to be this year paying for any of that travel, you've eliminated that piece. Maybe you're doing all virtual interaction, and say you want to use those funds for something else, that if that something else is not mentioned in your project budget, then we would need to see an updated project budget form, and we would want to review that introduction of those new kinds of costs. Another really important piece to keep an eye on is if project locations are changing. Anywhere that federal funds, activities supported by federal funds are being spent or are happening, needs to be reviewed for National Historic Preservation Act compliance. And that is something that only our Historic Preservation Officer can do. Brian Lesher, many of you have interacted with him. So if project locations are changing, that's all right. Just let us know as soon as you become aware of and are kind of clear on what those changes are. And we will re-review those activities and those locations. And of course, if your project period is needing to change, right? If you're seeing that really to execute all of the work and get all of the costs taken care of, you need to extend your project period. That's fine. We're doing a lot of that. You can let me know, we can talk that through. But that all of that is ultimately stuff that you will request changes for via REACH and will be reviewed and approved by our grants office. Anything to add there, Meg? We'll go into deeper detail in a lot of these things.
I don't think I'd add anything except to say that, especially in terms of changes to the scope of your project, it is absolutely fine to reach out to Catherine, Jen, anyone on the Our Town staff to sort of discuss changes, especially if things might be a little up in the air and you're trying to figure out exactly what kind of direction you want to go in on something. But do keep in mind that my office, the Office of Grants Management, we are the only office that is authorized to amend your award. So after you've had any discussions with Catherine or Jen, those changes do need to be requested via REACH. So you would just log in and as Catherine said, when you go into the My Awards section, click on the specific award. That change request tab is where any change requests need to be submitted. We do our absolute best to stay on top of messages that you might send us through the messaging function in REACH, but we have a limited staff and we have thousands of open awards. So if you're definitely making a change to your project and you're requesting approval for that change, please, please, please send it through a change request. It'll make it so that we can get to that as soon as possible so that we can review and approve and you can move on with your project.
Yeah, thanks, Meg. A lot of the time what happens is folks will reach out and just sort of talk through with me what needs to change. And I can help you kind of articulate in the most efficient way what your change request needs to be so that you're furnishing the grants office with all the info they need to really confidently approve your amendment request. And do that all the time. I'm happy to do it. But just keep in mind in that interaction, I'm not approving it. That's something the grants office does, like Meg said. So again, this is just re-emphasizing, let us know as things are changing. What the grants office really does not like is to read about how your project changed in your final report. They hate that. And it used to be that they would come storming over to my desk. This grantee's gone off the reservation. What is this? So just be in touch early. That's the way that we can best support you and make sure that you're on track. What's really unfortunate is if you come back talking about activity that we ultimately couldn't fund or support, or project budget costs that we can't support. You know, if you eliminate all your travel costs and then decide that you're gonna buy wine for a reception, you're gonna mail everybody boxes of wine for a virtual gallery reception or something, that would not be an eligible cost, and we could not send you a reimbursement for that. So that would be a shame. So keep in touch with us early. And speaking of payment requests, let's talk about that. I think the major thing here is just to let you know, folks, I think often for some reason have a kind of, fail to understand that you don't have to wait to the end of your project period to request all your funds. You can be making a request as you go on whatever schedule works for you. You can make requests as you incur costs or as needed. You can decide you want to just settle up with us on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis. You can wait till the end, but just want to let you know that you don't have to float everything until everything is carried out. You can even make an advance request up to 30 days before those anticipated costs will be incurred. Again, we can make reimbursements based on actual documentable expenditures, and you make those payment requests via reach. And I say here that the grants office is usually able to turn those around within 30 days. It's looking like we're keeping on pace with that, but like Meg mentions, we're just human beings all working from home with the same limited staff that we've always had. So thanks for your patience. Also, just make sure that your banking information that we have is current. So if things are changing there, just keep in mind you need to make that update with us too. Like I mentioned, there's this a really low-key, no-stress progress report that we request as you have pulled down 2/3 of your award. It's just a quick rundown of activities. It's not like a big formal report. That's for the end. This is just letting us know the project is underway. You really are coming up on you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. You're on schedule to wrap up. And that just lets the grants office kind of understand where the money's going and what's remaining. That is you'll see that as you make payment requests, you'll see a space where you can give that report. And if you reach that amount to pull down without providing that report, grants office will just probably reject your request, turn around and ask you to please give us a little update on your project as a progress report. And just remember, of course, you want to be making requests that are in alignment with that approved project budget we have on file. You can only make requests for costs incurred during a project period. So if that may mean that you need to make it a project period extension if those timelines are not in sync. Obviously don't make requests for things that we can't fund. And remember the major things that come up there are construction or like landscaping kind of costs, any kind of capital costs, or parties, namely alcohol is something we can't fund. And keep your banking info up to date. The one-to-one match requirement is still in effect. And if that's something that's really giving you an issue, we can talk about that and kind of like revisit what makes for an eligible match. I'll plug Sarah Allen's next session. She's going to talk about financing creative placemaking work. So that might be something to tune into if the match is becoming kind of a source of anxiety right now. I know that it is challenging. So some things to keep in mind around your match is that you've got to keep documentation of where that match is coming from, especially those in-kind contributions. And we have some resources on the Manage Your Award page for tracking that if you don't have a system for doing that at your home organization. Everyone's favorite, National Historic Preservation Act. just want to remind you, if project activities or locations are changing relative to what we approved at the outset, you've got to let us know. Don't send a final report about a mural that you painted at a, without letting us know that you're planning to execute a mural on a historic site. That will be a problem. We won't be able to reimburse those costs until the Historic Preservation Act clearance is given, and that's especially awkward if you've already done the thing. Just stay on top of that, and that the earlier the better for a lot of reasons. One of which is that we can't release funds until that clearance is reissued. So stay in touch with us about that. And hey, why not? Let's think ahead about what is expected with the final reports. Hopefully it's not too onerous, but I think it, again, kind of takes the edge off if you were to just peek now at what those requirements are. So it's some financials, which is actually way less daunting than you might think. The form is actually pretty simple. It's not all that much information at all. But plenty of instructions on our site if you have questions in completing that. The final descriptive report, which is us requesting a lot of data from you, I think mostly about kind of who has benefited and who has participated in this project, some more narrative questions about just how things went, what surprised you, any challenges along the way. Nothing too daunting, I don't think. Some information about where project activity happened, and no final product is required from any of you. So that's a moot point. And your final reports are submitted via Reach. They're due 90 days after the end of the project period. If you request a project period extension, then we'll recalculate your deadline date for your final report. So I'm just re-emphasizing, hey, take a look at what we require now. That might sort of jog your imagination around how you go about evaluating this project on your own terms, and what kinds of things you might want to be tracking, really, as far as kind of who you're reaching with your project work, and kind of how you're doing some of your own learning and evaluation and reflecting on the project as it unfolds. I think I mentioned you can request an extension on the final report. Be in touch with us if that's something that you need. Don't just let it sit there unaddressed until we send you a nastygram reminder. And again, if you've got overdue final reports, that makes you ineligible for an award. So that's no good. So we, and just want to reemphasize, just keeping in mind, as so much is shifting and changing, just to keep in mind that it's great to credit the Arts Endowment. And personally, my attitude about this is I think that it's nice for our town, I think especially, I kind of want the American public to know that the Arts Endowment is funding this really impactful work in communities. It might be a surprise for some folks to learn that the Arts Endowment has the kind of reach that we have through our town. So I think that's the kind of spirit I think about with crediting the Arts Endowment, in particular with this portfolio. So, and you also can be sort of interacting with the Arts Endowment via social media. Our logo is accessible on our website. And woof, it's hard to imagine because there's so much going on, but you might be thinking about applying again to the Arts Endowment for another award. And even though you've got an open award right now, you can be applying to our town. Our next deadline will be in August for the fiscal year 22 awards. And so that the project start date there would be July 1, 2022. You can apply for grants for arts projects, right? The more flagship Arts Endowment program for discipline-specific art projects. You can also apply for Challenge America. But just the major thing to keep in mind is that you've got to apply for a different project from what you have open and underway with us now. That could be a different phase of a project, sort of building on. But really the rule of thumb is that you can have no overlapping costs. So that can get difficult to track if you have multiple things open at the same time. That can be a kind of a red flag. We'll question, like, really, can you be doing all of this at once with really nothing overlapping? So just be kind of clear in your planning there if you're thinking about coming in for another award, another application. So again, everything I've talked about here is addressed on our Manage Your Award page. Tons of resources, lots of instructions, lots of sample forms, your project budget form if you need to update that. There's a blank one here for you. The Manage Your Award handbook that has everything to the letter that I've talked about is here. Reach instructions are in the handbook. But of course, always, if you've got questions about anything, you can just reach out to me. One thing that's new that we don't need to dive into deeply with this, but I do want to address it in this space, is that we have now, and again, like as of last week, a general operating support waiver. So this year, to aid the arts community during the COVID-19 pandemic, Congress has included language in the Consolidated Appropriations Act 2021, blah, 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 that allows the National Endowment for the Arts to change certain awards issued in fiscal years 2019 to 2021 from project-based support to general operating support. For our town, this is, I think, really complicated because this project work that we are supporting through this program is really important, and you've got tons of partners involved. On the other hand, it's been a really crazy year, and I think this waiver is meant in the spirit to acknowledge it's a struggle for some organizations just to keep the lights on. So it's something that to be aware of. It may be something that you need to take advantage of. You can do a full or partial waiver. There are, I think, a ton of kind of what if scenarios. So if this is something that you're thinking about, you can reach out. We'll put you in touch with the grants office to really work through how this might make sense for you in application. I'm hesitant to get too into this here because I'm not sure whether it will apply to everyone. So if you've got questions about this, let's just keep in mind to be in touch about it offline. Oh, but I should read some of the things. Meg, can you list off some of the kinds of costs that would be eligible under the waiver?
Sure. So with the waiver, really the only allowable expenses would be sort of day-to-day business expenses, staff salaries, wages. If you have, any contracted staff or contracted artists, that would also be allowable. Facilities costs, so rent of your space, utilities, things like that. Supplies, it could be office supplies, art supplies, cleaning supplies, PPE, that would also be allowable. We have a full sort of list of, things that are allowable versus things that are unallowable in that instructions FAQs document that you can see on your screen right now. Ooh, I'm sorry. My fire alarm is going off. Could we maybe pause for a second and I'll come back?
Sure. Yeah. Wow. Poor Meg. Oh no. Oh no. Poor thing. I guess I'll just note here that the one-to-one match would still be required. And just to flag that this is, like Meg was mentioning, this is really day-to-day costs. This is not an opportunity to like do a new project or anything like that. So again, we can talk about that offline if this is something that seems like it may be necessary for you. And now I am happy to take questions, and I'm sure that Meg will join us once her fire alarm. I hope that that's not a real fire. So folks, here, why don't I stop the screen share, and you are welcome, please, to send questions in the chat. I don't know if we have the raise hand thing in this, but you could also just speak up, whatever's more comfortable, and we can start fielding some questions.
Catherine, there's a question here. This is Lynn. It's from Mary in Terre Haute, Indiana. If meetings or community events occur during the performance period that are on Zoom or another virtual platform, how do we handle categorizing those sites within our reports? In other words, you probably don't want to know the locations of everyone participating in the meetings, ...
Oh, I think that's a good question. Honestly, to answer that, I would have to look at the instructions for that, but I would err to kind of like on the ground locations. It's a good question though. When Meg comes back, we can ask her to elaborate. Thank you, Lynn, for fielding.
You're welcome. There aren't any other questions coming in over the chat. So if you do have questions, please, please, please send them in. The other thing you can do, because we've got about 30 people on this call. So we feel really comfortable with people just turning off their mute and just jumping in and asking a question. It's totally fine to do that. You all have access to be able to do that. Nobody's, everyone has the ability to jump on and turn on their camera and turn on their mic. So, oh, another question from just came in from Shannon in Omaha. If the overall project expenses are reduced to eliminating travel, but are still well above the one-to-one match, does that pose a problem? So if the project expenses for your project are reduced because you're not doing any travel.
I think this gets to another kind of larger question. It seems like what you're really asking is if we're just reducing our number of expenses. In other words, the project budget is shrinking because you just didn't end up needing to spend the kind of money you thought you would need to spend in order to carry out the project activities. Then that's all right. Some people are worried that you're gonna like lose the funds if you don't spend all the money. But what we would do there is sort of look at what were your actual expenditures and make an adjustment to the award amount based on what your total project costs were. And so then if you got a $25,000, if you got a $50,000 award and you end up spending $48,000 and oh God, multiply that by 2, someone. The 48 by 2 would be your overall project budget. And we would just adjust your award amount to 48 and close you out like that. That's just fine. Some worry that it's sort of like an all or nothing and you'll lose the award amount. Maybe that means also that like implicit in that is like a scope adjustment, meaning like some of the activities were impossible to carry out or just happened differently. So that means what we would want to do, I think the scope adjustment is important also because there is sort of an official description of your project that's really brief, 3 to 5 sentences that the public can view. And we have researchers accessing those all the time. It's really kind of an important document as far as what was this project that the public can easily access without doing like a FOIA request. So we want to make sure that that reflects what actually happened. So if you're curious about what that is, those are all published on the recent grants page. I can find that link. But it's like a searchable interface that will yield a project description. So anyway, if your project is changing, we also would edit that to make sure that it reflects. Now, if your project, the scope thing, really we want to, a reason we would reject a scope change request is if your activities are changing so much to the point where it's really an unrecognizable project relative to what you applied for and what the review panel kind of recommended, then we would say, you know, why don't you just apply again for this totally new idea and project? But I think we're reviewing those with an awareness that it's so, like, just the times. Anyway, not to get too into the weeds on this, I think I'm reinforcing my point that we just want to be in touch with you about that so that we can work something out. Yeah, hope that's helpful.
Shannon said, thank you. We don't have any other questions that have come in yet, so please go ahead and send those in. I also just want to just chat for a second around LISC's role in this particular area, which is that we don't really have one. I have been getting questions from folks over the last few months just about very specific details about managing their award. So if you have any questions about managing your award, any of the subjects that Catherine was just talking about, please be in touch with Catherine about those questions, because LISC is not in the situation where we're managing any of that grant making work or any of the technicalities behind the grant making. But do reach out if you have questions about your project and you need us to hook you up with resource team members, that kind of thing. But when it comes to managing your award, it really needs to go through Catherine.
I have a question. Is this helpful for folks? Is it helpful to kind of see an overview of what's expected and some of the things that are flags for us? Hey, Meg is back. All right.
I am so
I'm
sorry.
glad that your building is not on fire.
It seems to be a false alarm, but our fire alarm system is quite robust.
Yes, we can vouch for that. Well, we don't have a lot of questions, Meg. I was just asking folks if this kind of, this isn't typical. We don't do this outreach necessarily. So it's helpful for us to know if this is too boring or if it's helpful. Okay, sounds like it's helpful. Okay, cool. Y'all are just being nice. Cool. Well, if there aren't any other questions, we can definitely wrap up early. Meg is back, so if you have a really, really hard question, you can ask that now. But we didn't expect to use the full period, so no problem. Oh, Vicky says, reinforce Catherine's message to stay in touch with our town staff. Catherine, Jen, others are so helpful and not intimidating. Oh, thank you.
Well, I'm going to just chime in on that because, you know, as a former, you know, city person and young artist or whatever, and like, you know, the last 30 years of like work interacting with with all of you, it's like I was always as a person applying for a grant with my organization, sometimes intimidated by having to like contact a federal agency. And so don't be intimidated. Just reach out to Catherine, reach out to Meg. We're all just people. And so, you know, don't ever be afraid to do that. No matter how far along you are in your career or how early you are in your career, just reach out. The NEA is there to help. They're an amazing organization and a great government agency. So, and I think the other thing too that comes up in sometimes in this work is that we're afraid to sort of like expose something that might be problematic. The best thing to do is actually talk it through with a staff person, because they will actually help you figure out how to, you know, come to terms with whatever's happening. And the bottom line is everyone wants you to be successful. So don't hold back when you're having an issue or problem. I think that's just really important to understand. So.
The only thing I would definitely echo that, Lynn, and at least for my part, from the Office of Grants Management, Catherine did a really great overview on sort of all of the manager award basics. And of course, we have all the resources on our website, but we are absolutely available if you have questions specific to your award. grants@arts.gov is our main email box. We have multiple people who check that every single day. So if you do have any questions, even anything where you're not sure if it might need a formal change request, or even just, how do I fill out the payment request form, absolutely reach out to us and we will get back to you. And also, just in the current situation, with the pandemic, I'll tell you that we have amended thousands of open awards. We absolutely understand how insane things are right now, how crazy they have been over the past year. And we absolutely know that projects have needed to change, that budgets have needed to change. And so, we don't need you to put a great spin on things or put a gloss on things. If you do need to make changes, we can help you with that. And we can sort of, take a look at what your specific circumstances might be. And, we can absolutely amend awards. You're not locked in to everything, changes. We know changes have to be made, and we can help you make that happen.
Hey, Meg, we have one question that's a hard one. So I was just describing kind of what the final reports, and for the Geo reporting, someone asked, with so many people tuning in on Zoom all around the country, and, for work that might have otherwise been for a more local audience. Do you know how that's handled, or what to emphasize in that Geo reporting?
That is a good question. I believe we would just be looking for your organization's location. So wherever you were when you were doing the online event. I don't believe that we're expecting you to try to capture, where all of your audience members were tuning in from. But and so much of it depends on your specific context. So if you do have, questions when you're working on that, definitely send us an email or send us a reach message, and we can help you through that. But my understanding is that we're really looking for just the physical locations where your activity took place. So if you, recorded a webinar in your office space, we just need the address for your office space.
It's described in that you gave me time to actually look it up. So it's a listing of the geographic locations and venues where grant activities took place. So yeah, I agree with Meg. I would kind of think like venue, the headlining spots. And then in your final descriptive report, just a different document, but a part of the complement of final reporting stuff, you'll have a space to say more about like the audience and the reach. But a good thing to keep in mind that is something that you'll want to track. It's nice data to have, for seeking funding elsewhere. Well, that was a good hard question. Thank you. And I think that we're totally fine to wrap early. If there are any other questions, just add them, but I'll kick it to Lynn. Meg and I can say goodbye. I'm glad you got a chance to meet Meg, and that Meg got a chance to meet all of you. And Lynn's gonna tell us what's coming up next.
Great, thank you. This was a great session. Thank you, Catherine and Meg. Thank you so much. So the next session, it starts at 1:45. It's with Sarah Allen, Sarah Thompson Allen from the Center for Great Neighborhoods in Covington, Kentucky. She's going to talk about how to financially make the most of your Our Town project with some really specific, good strategies and techniques for thinking about how to do your match and all kinds of other things. Sarah is really wonderful. She has a very varied background in where she comes from this work, from where she comes from doing this work. She's worked in really urban neighborhoods in Kensington, Philadelphia, and now she's at the Center for Great Neighborhoods in Covington, Kentucky. And so she really understands the rural context and the urban context. And so I think it's going to be a really great session. I encourage you all to join at 1:45. Those of you who maybe this is the first lab you've joined, we scheduled these so that you actually have breaks in between so that you can actually check your email, use the restroom, have your lunch, check on your kids, whatever you need to do. And so we ask you just come back in on that same Zoom link and you'll be in the waiting room again for a few minutes. And then as soon as we're ready to go, we'll start. We try really hard to start right on time. And so just make sure you're back in the room at like 1:44 and we'll be ready to go at 1:46. And then the only other thing I just forgot to tell everyone at the beginning was we do have closed captioning going for these sessions. And so if you need that, you can just, you'll see the CC in the bottom. I'm sure folks who needed it figured that out already, but just wanted to make sure that we announced that as well. So I guess we'll just wrap up and look forward to seeing you all. Oh, one more thing. Of course, there's always one more thing. If you're finding that there are people in your organization or on our town project team that you did not invite to this, that you feel like might actually want to be part of it, it's still fine to send them the link and have them join us. Encourage them to go to the Eventbrite and sign up, but there's no reason you can't just share this link around continuously for the next 3 days and get more people on your team to join in. So if that comes up, don't be shy about just having them join us. And with that being said, we'll let you go and enjoy the next 45 minutes of time. Thank you so much. Bye.